Hi, how's it going? I hope that you're having a good day so far and that you're doing well. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to like it, share it, all of that helps me and it helps this channel. I just wanted to come on and talk about Neptune direct. I'm also planning on doing another video about the solar eclipse that's coming up on Friday. But first, I'll take a second to announce that I'm currently offering eclipse mini readings, either recorded or written. So and they're by donation. So if you would like one, send your time, date, and place of birth to my email, meredithsluckystars@gmail.com. I'll probably put it in the description. And then I'm also offering 2022 readings recorded for a very accessible rate. And the information for that will be in the description as well for you to place your order for that if you'd like one. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to start out with was just how grateful I am for a few individuals and their work, especially as we come up on the new moon solar eclipse. I feel like so grateful for teachers, which is what the Gemini and Sagittarius axis has most to do with. So I wanted to really just extend a bunch of gratitude for Kimberly McGeorge, who I'll link her YouTube channel and website in the description below. She's helped me so much to catalyze and to discover my own abilities and to kind of find myself in the midst of all of this. And I'd also like to give a shout to Shane, who's been so helpful in helping me to kind of like get a sense for and begin to frame some of the visions that I was having. He's an asset and a resource at this time. And he's also newly offering like one-on-one sessions. And I think that's awesome. So I'm just trying to support both of them and also extend gratitude because their role has been helpful in my life. And since the new moon solar eclipse that's coming up that I'm not going to talk about right now, but I'll talk about in a few days probably, the thing that comes up around that is like, you know, looking back over the last 18 months since May of 2020, what have you learned? How has your mind evolved? How has your belief system changed? And those are two people I think that I met in that transit and that I have learned a lot from and like, you know, gained a lot of insight and information. And even just talking to them helps me to kind of like have more access to memories. So just wanted, and more empowerment too, which I think is important at this time when I think it's kind of easy to get a little bit disempowered, you know? But yeah, so I wanted to come talk about Neptune direct, and I want to keep talking about Neptune and Pisces because this is leading into my talks that I'm recording on 2022. You know, Neptune in Pisces is a really important story arc to follow. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about Neptune direct, both personally and collectively. And I'm also going to give a few examples of Neptune direct throughout history, or Neptune in Pisces throughout history, and just kind of like, just so we can get a sense of like where we're actually at. All right, so Neptune went into Pisces in 2011 and is going to be there until 2026. So this is a long-term transit. It's a really long-term story. It's such a opportunity for spiritual growth and spiritual connection. I think that, you know, obviously we come to Earth and we have an incarnation or a reincarnation here. And we're kind of like, we really feel, especially at the density that Earth is at right now, how it feels to be separate from ourselves, from the divine. And that's kind of the human being like hero's journey that we kind of go through. And I think that Neptune in Pisces really provides this opportunity to mend the fence, between us and our different aspects, our higher selves and our soul self. It really allows, like, it's like the veil is becoming like non-existent. And I think a lot of that has to do with this Neptune and Pisces transit, in addition to some of the solar energies and the Schumann resonance and things like that. I think it's like all working together really to create just the spiritual impulse or the spiritual priority in some. So I want to talk about this Neptune direct station, tomorrow, which is Wednesday. I believe December 1st, Neptune is stationing direct. And since Neptune has been retrograde since June 25th, I think Neptune retrograde tends to be a time of like disillusionment, of, kind of realizing like where we're lying to ourselves or where we've been duped, so to speak. And I think that that this will come up, that this has come up. I mean, I know a lot of people who have become very disillusioned, which I think is a necessary process, because then you get to empower yourself. You get to be your own savior. The savior, martyr, victim story is a lot of what Neptune and Pisces is about. And I think in a way, we're really like playing those out, hopefully, so that we can be done with them and those archetypes and those stories. It's my hope anyway. So yeah, so the personal pros of this Neptune direct station, and you'll have to check to see if Neptune is direct or retrograde in your chart. If you want to let me know what sign it is in the comments, feel free. So with the personal pros, we have like increased, I wrote all of this down because I tend to like go on these long rants whenever I don't have notes. So my note to self is to have notes now. So we have like increased spiritual connection, retrieving soul fragments. It's like a very much like can be a remembrance or a rejoining with Neptune direct, because sometimes Neptune retrograde, like the influence, moves further away from us. And so we can kind of like we can forget to remember, so to speak, so I think that it's good to be practical and to be tangible and to focus on the stuff of the 3D. And I think that with Neptune retrograde, maybe we have a little bit more access to be able to even do that. It's like, we're not like super quick to be like swept off in a spell or an illusion when Neptune is retrograde. So, I think that this is like also within a few people. I don't know exactly how many people, but I've just been watching this in my practice over the years, is like there's this mystic revival, like a revival of like the witch, and like a revival of the mystic, and like a revival of what it means to have holiness and to embody holiness or wholeness or whatever. It's a returning of that mystical impulse. And I think that now that Pisces is, or Neptune rather, is in the latter decan of Pisces, or it'll move, closer and closer into that space. The third decan of Pisces is ruled by Mars and Pluto. So it's a Scorpio decan. So, this is where like throughout history, we start to see dark things. But like I talked about in my Scorpio season video, it's like we realize how powerful we are, how strong we are, how much we actually got this. Like, I don't think we realize how resilient we are as humans as of this current moment. And so I think that that is something to pay attention to and to honor, is your own resilience. And we actually like break through spiritually in crisis or in trauma. I mean, I know this because this is what my life has been about. So Yeah, definitely applauding that. So the personal cons are like telling ourselves the same lie and the same story over and over and over and over again. So it's like, really, are we going to fall into the same traps? Like we've all kind of been working our way, through these different loops, through our different issues and our different patterns. And I think that it's time to get off the wheel. It really is, and I think that that comes down to like more moment to moment to moment choices and sense making, which has way more to do with Virgo than it does with Pisces. And obviously, there's no Virgo in the sky because if there was, we would have some sense made and some facts presented and like some clear communication and experts that I might be able to trust. Who knows? It's just really good, I think, to continue to be honest with yourself because with Neptune moving into that conjunction with Jupiter that I keep kind of like circling back to, it's just important, I think, to keep this in mind, like to not just fall back asleep and to not just go back into the same illusion. Like, I don't think that that's what our soul really wants. I think we went through the last 3 years of like heavy duty Capricorn transits so that we can find our discernment and we can find our authority in all of this, right? And so I think that Neptune stationing direct is like and with Jupiter moving into Pisces at the end of December, moving into that conjunction with Neptune, it's like, okay, really, what are we going to do? Um, in our own personal lives. Like, are we going to get off the wheel or are we going to keep running the same script over and over and over, And it's a choice, I think. And I think that with a lot of with Uranus and Taurus, with Pluto and Capricorn, like there are times where like we are just going to have to make it work. Okay. So the other thing is going unconscious. So this is like, I think that we could see like in this Neptune direct and as it continues to move forward, especially with Jupiter in Pisces next year, the tendency to want to go unconscious personally, meaning unconscious to what your energy is doing, what's not you, what is you, because Pisces has to do with energetic transference and sort of like the spiritual boundaries that ideally we would have well cultivated in a healthy, upright society. So I think that that's something to pay attention to, like to not go unconscious to your own space. Like, having awareness, because we're not always perfect, we're not always going to be conscious, but I think that like having awareness over when you go unconscious so that you can know like the signs and that you can like bring yourself up and out of it and do things daily to stimulate consciousness and to build up your energetic body and your electromagnetic field and your light body so that you can be able to like be strong and like a golden pillar, as Amy would say. So the collective pros are empathy and tolerance, like in a genuine sense. Like I actually can see right now, as I look out into the collective, I can see a lot of people coming together over a very honorable ideal. And I do think that that will continue. Neptune and Pisces throughout history, as we'll get into, is a time of revolution. So that definitely like shows up and continues to show up. And I'll share more about that in a second. But empathy and tolerance, and true empathy and tolerance, I think is available to us where we're not like proselytizing as empathic and tolerant, but we actually are like empathic and tolerant of other people's choices. And I think that being in that space will help us to avoid maybe some of the pitfalls that can come with this transit. I think that this Neptune and Pisces transit helps us to forge genuine relationships and relating. It also can give like group experiences of organic gnosis. So I think that probably in a group setting, this is a pretty powerful time to come together, which probably explains all of the other things that are going on right now anyway. So, and I think also just like finding connection and finding like touch with your own sense of God and like that being available for a lot of people. I think that that's definitely an impulse that is taking place in the world right now. But it's like, what is your God? Like, is your God the Old Testament daddy God, or is it like the like divine aspect of you, or is it a religious entity or deity, or is it the almighty Lord and Savior Jesus science? Like, what is your we want to in this time, my senses, my overwhelming senses that we want to be aware not to give too much attention and too much energy to saviors. I would be very resistant to any like savior energy when Neptune is direct or retrograde, any at all when Neptune is in Pisces. I'm just not trusting it. So yeah. So yeah, like I would say that the collective cons would be the spell, the media mind control virus, probably amping up with the Neptune direct. So keep your head on straight, stay in the center of yourself. The collective unconsciousness. So it's kind of like, and that's kind of a theme with Neptune and Pisces, right? Looking out over the collective and being like, wow, like, we're not all the same. The glorification of victimhood is something that I notice as a con of this, and it just plays into the victim, rescuer, martyr complex. I think that these archetypes and engaging in them could be kind of not dangerous, but I would just be really careful with really like indulging in those archetypes. One of my favorite Twitter therapists, her name is, I think, Sarat Chala, I think is how you pronounce it. But she says, no matter how dark it gets, no matter what happens, there's always the potential to have agency. And I think that the agency and the intuition with this Neptune and Pisces transit are like hand in hand. Your connection to spirituality and your connection to the all, those things are super important within this sort of scape that we're riding and that we're moving into. I think that there's a hero's journey associated with having our boundaries tested, which kind of plays into, the spiritual war, which I do believe is a thing that's happening. Like, I know that like some, there's the spiritual community is obviously divided and mixed on like how they feel about what's happening right now. But I personally have the experience in the last, like 5 or 6 years of spiritual warfare. So for me, it's real, but, not everyone has to agree with me on that. But I do think that like people can too invade your boundaries and your energetic boundaries. And, it's kind of, Pisces is the antithesis of Virgo, which, Virgo is like actually paying attention to like the fine line between like where you end and I begin. But Pisces isn't as much. It's way more transpersonal. And also, I think has to do with boundary violations from what I looked through in history. So without further ado, I'll get into that. In 1357 AD, the Paris Revolt ended the feudal society and there were economic changes in Europe. So as I was looking throughout the history, I saw a lot of economic restructuring and a lot of like mass migration and maybe even displacement as well. So in 1521 AD, the Protestant leader Martin Luther was banned. His books were burned, and in Capricorn season nonetheless. on January 3rd of 1521 AD. This was the beginning of the Protestant Revolution and also initiated one of the Italian Wars from 1521 until 1526. And seems to be all a lot of wars over religion, conquests, land, that kind of thing. I don't know if you guys can think of anything similar that's happening in the world right now. All right. And then the Holy League of 1684, all of these are correlated to Neptune and Pisces, by the way. Just, I thought I said that, but in case that needed to be reiterated, there it is. The Holy League of 1684. So this was an alliance to prevent the expansion of the Ottoman Empire into Europe. So this was a large consolidation of world military or European military between Poland, the Holy Roman Empire, Venice, Tuscany, Malta, and Russia. And then from there, the Ottoman Empire seemed to have less and less and less and less power and were like kind of driven out. So in 1848 in Europe, the ideas of a man named Karl Marx and communism were introduced at a time of immense social upheaval. So there was a typhus outbreak, there was collapse of credit institutions and famine, crops getting thrown out and things like that in Europe. And this, sparked a class war throughout European cities. But the thing that I thought was interesting as I was researching this and looking through this was that Engels, in his own words, said, the fruits of the revolution were reaped by the capitalist class, which I can only assume is the ruling class or the predatory class. So safely to say right now, it's very, very healthy to question the motives of the billionaires. All right. So yeah, I think that just about sums it up. Oh, the Civil War and in the States and the Salem witch trials as well so we kind of see this like religious persecution and censorship and, wars over religions and faiths and things like that during this period. And so we really want to lean into the higher impulse of this Neptune and Pisces transit. Can we walk through this all with grace? And, can we walk through all of this with genuine, not artificial, not virtual or virtue, but like, can we walk through this time with compassion and grace for ourselves, for others? Even if things get a little bit darker, like that's kind of the question that I'd like to posit. So yeah, let me know if you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day and that you enjoy the dreamy and expansive fruits of Neptune and Pisces and the spiritual connection that comes with that, because I've already kind of started to feel the winds of that. And I'm super grateful for it. So yeah, life is but a dream. Take care.